blessed to have amongst us the distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Ravindra Udgikar. Sir is a Vice President, Corporate Strategy Marketing at Praj Industries Limited. Praj is India's leading industrial biotechnology company, providing end-to-end technology solution including design, engineering, and manufacturing of plant and equipment for the biofuels industry globally. Sir holds a doctorate in management in addition to his bachelor degree in electronics and telecommunication engineering, both from Pune University. He had successfully completed an executive program GAMPRO 2007 from University of St. Gallen, Switzerland. He has undergone several senior management executive learning and development programs organized by leading institutions such as CCL USA, ISB India. His professional background includes over 29 years of industrial experience in product as well as project businesses in the international and domestic markets. He has an established track record in the sales, marketing, business development, and strategy domain with leading corporations in India and abroad. I would now request Dr. Chabi Sinha ma'am to felicitate and welcome the guest speaker for the day, Dr. Ravindra Udgikar. Thank you, madam. I would request Dr. Ravindra Udgikar to share his experience and insight regarding his views about the marketing opportunity in the current VUCA world. I request all the dignitaries to please take the front seats.
Good morning. You can hear me well at the back? So, it's nice to be back at the campus. MIT is where I did my electronics telecommunication engineering when it was at a very early stage. And Dr. Viri, yeah, so sorry about that. But I was just saying that it's a great feeling to be back at the campus, at the very same institute where you spent very formative years of your career. And definitely those years have contributed to whatever little I have been able to achieve in my career. Thank you for all this nice, generous introduction. Dr. Chavan has already stolen the thunder because she already gave away most of the insights. I think my fellow speakers will agree that, we were wondering that, the more she speaks, the more, we get worried that what are we left here to talk with. But that was on a lighter note. But thank you very much for setting that context. It's one of those first events where I'm attending in physical form, although there have been numerous online programs that I was part of, including few with MIT ADT. But it's such a great feeling to be amongst people, bright young students wanting to make a great impact and make a career in marketing. So in a way, it's a self-serving mutual admirers club, if I can call it that way. Nevertheless, the topic that is assigned to me is marketing opportunity in the current VUCA world. And before I get to the topic, I just want to quickly can you read the slide at the back? Is it? So I think the lights. No, no, ते ठीक है. Then the lights. His lights. Right. That's much better. Is it? Can you read it well now? Okay, this is the company I represent, Praj Industries, which is India's best known industrial biotechnology company. And our company is pioneer in biofuels, renewable chemicals and materials, and we are actually facilitating climate action through circular bioeconomy. The recently concluded COP26 summit drew back on the table importance of conserving environment and climate, and we all have to do best we can to minimize the greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore adopt or graduate to sustainable practices, sustainable materials, sustainable fuels, and our company is just working in that direction. Some of the statistics of the company speak for themselves. Probably you can look up the website where you'll get more information. The way I have structured my presentation is I'm going to talk a little bit about this VUCA word. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the term VUCA, and we are going to little bit brush up in this module what is this VUCA and why it is relevant today, although Dr. Chavan already mentioned what it is. And I will talk the other three modules as we get there. So basically we all know the full form of VUCA. It is about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. World today is little bit in that zone, and we are not out of that zone yet. So this calls for graduating to new approaches, new practices. Something that worked in the past is not going to work going forward, and that calls for completely radical shift, paradigm shift in the way we do business, the way we acquire customers, the way we grow customers, the way we retain our customers. And that is why this VUCA environment is very important. And the quote below from Donald Rumsfeld is something which is very, very, very insightful. That all of us, when we get in the business environment, we have known knowns, which we keep doing all the time. We have known unknown, something that we do not know, but we are aware that we do not know this. There is a blind spot and something we work towards. And the last one is something which I would like you to think about. There are unknown unknowns, which means we don't know what we don't know. And it is that part that we have to be concerned about, because that's exactly where we get caught on the wrong foot. And that's exactly where the panic situation arises. And that's why this VUCA environment comes into the play. Volatility is the first one amongst the VUCA world. And volatility is actually caused by change in the nature, the way we are doing things. There is a frequent change. And that change is not predictable. Take the oil pricing. I mean, we have continuously seen that the fuel prices are going up. Not long ago, there was a crisis about the coal availability, coal demand supply situation, which brought a serious concern about whether we will have sustained electricity beyond 4 days, 5 days, because there was only that much stock of the coal available. So that creates volatility. And to get over volatility, we need to have vision. Vision is not something like a switch on, switch off button. So, for example, if we have to move away from the fossil fuel resources and go to renewable energy, we have to start planning with a vision in mind that India will graduate to something which is cleaner, greener technology. So somebody has to set right the vision, After independence, Prime Minister Nehru got Dr. Vikram Sarabhai to come back in India and start the space program. And today we are beneficiary of all the strides India has taken in the space program. Same thing can be talked about nuclear program. So that is a great example of vision. So this vision is something which is going to help you stay clear of the volatility. The next one we have on the list is about uncertainty. When things are not sure, you don't know what's in store, what's coming your way, how the things are going to pan out, predictability. So that's where the things again go into panic mode. You always had these trade wars between America and China, imposing tariffs, imposing trade barriers, putting the supplies under sanction. That completely upsets the demand supply situation. And as the demand supply situation is compromised, you again have a situation where industries are worried about the business sustainability part. And that's where we have this uncertainty. And, no, but they can't read the slide in that case. Can you? I think let's focus on the session instead of recording, if you don't mind. That's understanding is more important. Yeah. So, for example, Commonwealth countries, the tensions coming there have a severe impact on the oil situation. There are only a handful of countries which are oil producers, and any uncertainty in that region, war-like situation, really sent rivers along the line. Or for example, I can give you that federal rate changes in US economy have impacts in other parts of the world. So it is commonly said that it is when the Wall Street sneezes, Dalal Street catches cold. Such is the globalized nature of the economy. And that's where this uncertainty element comes in. Next one we have is complexity. When there are multiple data points, like a spaghetti, you don't know what's going around. So you have to take cognizance of so many data points, and they are all often very dynamic in nature. So the outcome of any change is not predictable because the other input parameter also shifts. And that's where you have this big thing about complexity. And that's where the way to go about it is to bring clarity on as many data points as possible. All this sounds very easy, but over the years, data scientists, market researchers have worked overnight to be able to evolve how they can ride over this complexity. And this one example of GST reforms is a very telling example. Many of people who are in business or who are experienced a lot would know how difficult it is to comprehend the new laws and accordingly file returns on a regular basis. So that complexity element, but it's part of life. And then we have is ambiguity. So what you would want it to be ideal versus actual. The Brexit is supposed to be meant good for Britain and good for also European Union. That's how they separated. But in reality, what's happening, it's something which is very, very ambiguous. We do not know what's going to happen. Or there is so much talk about the COP26 and the climate actions and the carbon neutrality talk that the countries or the 2050 is where carbon neutrality is envisaged. China has committed to 2060. India has committed to 2070. But all this is subject to what they call as climate finance, which means the developing economy will have to feed the developed economy with finance and technology to be able to graduate to sustainable practices. And that's something which is not happening. So it's ambiguous right now whether we will get carbon neutrality or no. So that these are some examples of VUCA. So what happened during COVID time is something very similar to VUCA environment. We had this situation where, the entire lockdown meant the manufacturing came to a global halt, to a halt. Global supply chains were disrupted. There was severe mismatch between demand and supply. That impacted the market visibility and the stock markets came crashing. There was very weak consumer sentiments. There was very weak demand side. And as a result, often there was excess supply, but there was no market. Consumer buying power got affected. So the whole industries went into a tailspin. There were again labor immigration issues, which further complicated the problem. And all this, nobody knew what was the end point. There appeared to be no light at the end of the tunnel. Only this morning newspapers have said that the new virus found in Botswana coming out of South Africa or southern part of Africa is actually sending tremors all over the world. Many European nations have imposed sanctions. Germany, Austria, complete lockdown. So we really are not out of the woods yet. And that's why I think Dr. Chauhan was mentioning that this context of VUCA environment today, this time induced by the COVID, is very, very important for us as marketeers to understand. And then we can go and talk about what we can do as marketeers about it. In the next section, I'm going to talk a little bit about the business landscape. We as marketeers have to be cognizant of macro and microeconomic environment and what are its business repercussions. Then only we can start getting one level deeper towards segmentation, one level deeper towards positioning, targeting, and actually doing our marketing endeavors. So let's try and understand in this section what is the current business landscape. And the interest of time, I'm not going to go line by line, but what I want to emphasize here is that resurgence of COVID is still a very much a threat. That is something which the world is grappling with today. Economic recovery, although the only yesterday I think the RBI forecast or the other day they came to about 9.5% GDP for this year, which sounds good, but still it's work in progress. Many argue that the formal economy seems to be getting back. Informal economy, the challenges remain. So I think that's one area that we as marketeers have to be cognizant of. Life versus livelihood is a conflict that continues to grip. Whether people should travel, whether there should be physical meetings, whether there should be free movement of goods, transports, whether restrictions should be off. So all that is something which is, and double vaccination, is it good enough to be working? Somewhere, some biotech company CEO has said that after 6 months of second dose, you have to go for a booster dose. Whereas the WHO has said that it's a scam. So it's not clear at this point. And even European unions today have said that they will keep only 9 months window after the second vaccination to get the people inside. Which means we still do not know whether for our livelihood we will be able to freely travel or no. And then all these tectonic shifts that we are talking about in terms of geopolitical upheavals, whether it is Brexit, whether it is some tensions in the Middle East, whether it is some tensions to do with North Korea and South Korea or America standoff with the rest of the world, all this is something which are a part of our life, and that's the environment we have to be very cognizant of. And while we seek the foreign direct investment, while we seek the funding, while we seek the technology from across the seas, we are still emphasizing on Atmanirbhar Bharat, which means this tug of war between global and local continues to be there. You are inviting multinational companies but wanting the homemade companies to grow and to market. So how do you handle with this conflict? And this conflict is not just with India, it's all the way there across the world. So that's where we have to be cognizant of that environment too. And then if we keep going on a business landscape, we are seeing that multinational companies are coming with their top of the line technology offerings. They're giving our homemade domestic companies run for their money. They are coming with strong financial muscle holding power, whereas we are just coming out of this dark patch of GDP contraction. So we do not have that kind of muscle power. So that's another area we have to be watchful about. Innovation is the name of the game. It costs a lot of money. The product differentiators are dying. Because the product differentiators are dying, you have to innovate and come up with new products, new features. But then people who are Me Too players also give you run for your money because they are quickly imitating feature by feature. So how do you actually differentiate with the competitor and how do you make headway in the marketplace? It's something the marketeers have to think long and hard. I think there are sessions on partnerships, there are talks about branding, so I'm not going to quite touch on those topics, but those have become extremely important. Organizations have realized that nobody can do everything, everybody can do something. And that's how what Dr. Chauhan called as the value chain. And that's where marketeers had to be cognizant not of only front end or customer facing part, but also across the value chain, right from R&D to engineering to manufacturing to supply chain, logistics, projects, erection, commissioning, testing, handover, and care for life. So entire value chain marketeers have to be cognizant of, because at every piece of that value chain, there is an opportunity there which is hidden, whether it is on the product supply side or whether it is on solution service consulting side. And that's where more and more marketeers are now thinking that can they innovate or can they rejig their offerings to see that they don't attack only on the capex of customer but also on the opex of customers. So another thing as marketeers have to do as a part of their research is to anticipate what's going on in customers' mind. And many market research companies keep doing exactly that. What are their priorities in short term, in 12 months' time, and what are their priorities over medium to long term? And that's where I've tried to just, from various research reports, try to make a quick extract for you, not necessarily comprehensive and complete, but definitely throw some data points that customers all over the world would like to sit on the cash. They would not like to spend their capex, but they would like to defer their capex decisions. They would better be de-risking their supply chains, because when the global supply chains were halted, they started looking for the local vendors as a fallback plan. And that continues to be on playing big time on their mind. They're trying to review their processes from the pandemic and lockdown and the contraction, where they got hurt, which processes were inefficient, and that's where they're focusing and spending most of their time. And clearly it's been talked so much, and I'm sure through the conference it will get talked too much, that digital marketing, social media marketing, using internet to widen the reach, using various applications and softwares from the information technology is the way business continuity has happened. So how we can harness all those good things in digital marketing, it's something which is businesses are contemplating. And if we keep going down that path, we also see that over mid to long term, businesses are trying to rejig their value chain. They are trying to weed out the non-profitable elements of their value chain. They are trying to realign product market mix. They are trying to redefine the processes which are efficient. They are trying to see whether they can be part of that China plus one sourcing strategy that most European American nations are adopting, because we all know China is a global factory, but the uncertainties in China would mean that to de-risk their businesses, many businesses are looking for plus one destination. And then, customer centricity has clearly become a big focus. And that's where businesses are trying to get up close, personal. And I'm sure in the relationship session, you're going to have deeper insights on that. But this is how customers and or the businesses are thinking. So I'm not going to spend much time because I'm on the short of time and we are behind schedules. But I thought as a marketeer, while we take cognizance of what is the business environment, microeconomic environment, we must be also cognizant of what are high growth sectors, what are quote unquote recession proof sectors, what are the sectors that continue to do well even during the pandemic. And here are few that I have listed, certainly not comprehensive, but clearly we know that information technology, software industry continued to thrive because they found it very easy to work from home, to graduate to work from home environment. They continue to roll out video conferencing platforms. They continue to roll out new applications which help customer make decisions, which help customers keep in touch with their partners. So I think that's one industry that continued to do well. Then obviously there is so much awareness about environment, clean, green. We saw the skies were blue. We saw the rivers water were clean. We could breathe fresh air. So clearly there is a big awareness that if human activities are done in an organized, disciplined way, we could experience the same charms of environment. And again, the COP summit has redrawn that agenda on the table. So the environment related industries have done well. They will continue to do well. Banking, financial services, e-commerce was a way the business was ongoing. And I think that industry thrived, whether it is insurances, whether it is investments, stock markets, banking, they continued to operate. So I think that's one sector which continued to do well. And then healthcare, obviously no brainer, right? We were all seeing that, various types of medicines, drugs, vaccine, hospital infrastructure, availability of trained people, all that was wanting. So my next 4 slides are actually a little bit of a deep dive, but I will not spend much time. I'm just going to, the way to read these slides is I have said here what is that driving that particular sector or a segment. And we clearly saw when it comes to healthcare, we saw the limitations of public health system were exposed. That we did not simply have enough, for example, oxygen plants. We did not simply have the hospital infrastructure to take care of so many people. We did not have trained people to attend to them. So all that meant that all hospitals were put under audits and upgradations, and the budgets were sanctioned. So that drove the growth for that sector, and that will continue to drive growth for that sector. Same way, if we saw that the environment I spoke about, some of the big drivers coming from global mandates. And clearly India has committed to what Prime Minister called a Panchamrut agenda, which is about decarbonizing the economy, which is about graduating to cleaner, greener energy sources, which is about conserving environment, making sure that the the fossil fuel resources that are fast getting depleted, and Mother Earth that we are damaging irrevocably doesn't go on a mindless path. So this industry is also going to see so much activity, because environment, ESG, environment, governance, and social are the 3 parameters where the next businesses are being built. These are the 3 pillars on which next businesses are going to be built. These are the 3 pillars which every investor will look up whether the company is ESG compliant or no. And that's something which we'll have to take cognizance of. And obviously, we all realize that we depend so much on technology, whether it is Internet of Things, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is machine learning, whether it is blockchain, what is coming into play now. There is a information that can be made available instantaneously. That information can be converted into data. Data can be sanitized to get into intelligence. Intelligence can be worked upon to draw business insights, and those business insights will take you to right decision making. And I think, again, I keep referring to Dr. Chauhan's address that, it is not about drowning in the data, but it is about swimming in the data and making sense of that data. And that is what we as marketeers, being external customer market facing functions, have to do very, very rigorously. So business intelligence, market intelligence has got unprecedented future, because making sense of data is never been easy. And that's why these all big 5 consulting firms, McKinsey, Boston, PwC, EY, Deloitte, actually roll out all this information, data, and they come out with intelligence and insights and make it very, very customized to your solutions. So information technology has been at the forefront of helping us ride through this crisis. The next one is finance. I mean, finance to a business is like a blood or lifeline, blood flowing through our body. If there are no money movements, if there is no transactions, if there is no transfer of currency, probably the world would absolutely come to standstill. That did not happen, because the bank continued to operate in a remote mode, in an information technology driven infrastructure that they created, enable the consumers, businesses to keep their businesses glowing. So even if the stock markets actually had this contraction, they rebounded really quickly, because the earnings were hurt only in the H1 of last year. As we came to Q3, Q4, we have seen steadily recovery going. And all this, the credit is not as much given, but it was not for finance, banking, insurance industry, probably we would be in a deep, deep trouble. So what this pandemic or VUCA environment has told us, that there are few sectors, come sun, come rain, they will continue to do well. They will continue to provide impetus to the economy. And we as marketeers have to be cognizant that some of these functions cut across sectors, across industries. And therefore, we have to see how we can make ourselves relevant in terms of acquiring those skills and stay afloat. Having understood what is VUCA environment, having seen what is the macro, microeconomic environment and business landscape, now it's time we as marketeers have to think what marketing strategies, because getting into action without thinking is suicidal. So the saying goes. And just thinking without acting is time pass. So strategy and marketing plans are a little bit like two sides of a coin. So we have to then dovetail our strategies to be able to work in that environment. And here I'm prescribing 4-pronged strategy. The first strategy here is about the first strategy here is about customer centricity. And I see some of the segments also in the marketing meet on the customer strategy. And what we are saying here is acquiring, retaining, growing customers by leveraging companies' unique value proposition, unique capabilities. That's where we need to put our customer strategies. Then we are also going to talk about the marketing strategies, choosing high growth markets, profitable markets, high growth customer segments, customers of today, customers of tomorrow, not the customers which are not going to be in business, sunrise sectors. So that's about the marketing strategy. Then about business model strategy. We explained that from concept to commissioning and care for life, there is a huge opportunity for marketeers waiting there to be unplugged. But what should be our business model strategy? Where we add maximum value to our top line, bottom line, where we create growth frontiers. So we must rejig our business models to actually optimally organize our value chain in a win-win proposition. So that's also a very important part of strategy for any marketeers. Then we are talking about pricing strategies. Is it cost plus? Is it margin driven? Is it driven on what customer is willing to pay? What is the fair pricing? Pandemic taught us that we can't really go with a fixed rule book. You have to play based on what's happening in the market. So that's where the pricing strategy has to be done. And that is by devising pricing, factoring in the customers, competitors, and yet making sure company is making money. End of the day, the businesses have to make money. So the pricing is the very, very important part. So these are the 4 elements. And again, I won't spend much time on it, but basically data analytics tells you to reassess your customer portfolio. Who are the customers who are giving me repeat orders? Who are the customers where I'm making maximum money? Who are the customers who are on a high growth path? Who should I be doing business with? How do I make money with them? So all these insights are thrown by data analytics, but does those insights need to be acted upon? Then work only with those customers across the value chain or where there are synergies, develop relationships there, weed out non-profitable elements of your value chain. All this comes as a part of customer strategy. So you got to recalibrate your offering so that you are able to align with what your favorite customers or your favorite market segment wants. And that's the way this strategy is playing a very important role in actually helping us ride through this difficult environment. Then obviously marketing strategies. We all talked about that, outreach was an issue till the time we discovered what is digital marketing, and then came offshoot in social media marketing, then came several frontiers, and then there are ways and means marketeers need to influence the decision makers and decision influencers with their product, services, solutions. And that is where the marketeers have big role to play. So how do you understand customers' needs for today and tomorrow? Stated needs, unstated needs, and then come back and make your customer value proposition to fit the customer requirements or appeal to the customer is actually about marketing. There are several frontiers listed here, and we as marketeers need to take big cognizance and learn to specialize in some of this, because digital marketing is a way of life going forward. We have seen that machine learning, artificial intelligence has a big role to play. All these big success stories of Nakia and some of the other companies clearly give you a big cue that if you harness the prowess of digital technology and that of data analytics and that of a machine learning, you will be able to hit a pot of gold. And that's what it gets down to. The next we talk about is the business model strategy. And like I said, many times we found that when customers are deferring their capex plans, but they have no choice to continue with their opex plans. Opex plans means that the customers will continue to spend money what is required to keep their operations going. Therefore, the marketeers have to come back and see whether instead of targeting customers valid for the greenfield project, can we work on the brownfield opportunity? Can we see if we can get a share of his valet on the service side? Can we make sure that we have service offering which is complementing our tangible offering, which will keep us going in this difficult phase? So all these business models are very important. And you also need to see, insource versus outsource. What are some of the things which don't make sense, but better done through partnership route? So where you can collaborate, how you can build alliances that will help you as well as your partner steer through these crises, where you are able to maximize your profitability and where he is able to maximize. Are they synergistic? Are they complementing? So that's how the business model strategy need to be evolved. That is the way you will deliver business to your customers. And then finally, pricing. We spoke about, different types of pricing. We cannot have a standard operating procedure that is for all season, all reason throughout. That has to take cognizance of what's going on in the market, what customer is willing to pay. If you're asking for premium, are you able to justify the premium? Are you working on his ability to buy? Are you taking in cognizance the life cycle value that it will create for the customer and basing your pricing accordingly? Most of the customers have mindset to do a Excel sheet comparison using one of those portals. But can you make him see value in life cycle analysis, concept to commissioning, spare parts, schedule, unscheduled maintenance, downtimes, migration to, inventories and spare parts which are getting obsoleted over the life cycle? So there is a big thinking on the pricing side also. So all of us as marketeers need to pay big attention to the pricing part. Now that brings me to the last module, which I think is equally important module from your individual point of view. Because when I got this brief from your college, I said the marketing opportunity for who? Marketing opportunity for business, marketing opportunity for students to get marketing jobs, marketing opportunity for individuals for who? So I tried to put in there some concepts about marketing and how you can, as a budding marketeer, can make it relevant for yourselves. So this module comes on the backdrop of understanding VUCA, understanding business landscape, understanding what strategies we need to steer, what strategies we need to adopt to steer through this difficult environment. And as a marketeer, what's in it for me? That's very important. And that's what this module will try to address. So basically, the customer definition has changed a great deal. Earlier, we were concentrating on somebody who pays a price for the products or services that you sold. But the companies within the companies have internal customer concept. One department, because if we talked about the entire value chain, one department treats another department like an internal customer. There are deliverables, there are timelines. Time, cost, quality, quantity, risk are the 5 major parameters on the whole performance is measured. Those are getting individually measured. The businesses are consciously moving to profit centers, consciously weeding out cost centers. So even two departments working with each other have to be mindful that they don't contribute to eroding company's profitability. They don't cause any damage to company's top line. And that's where this definition of internal customer comes into the play. And as far as we as marketeers are concerned, we should have that every transaction with a third party, every touch point with a third party has to be treated as that of a customer. And that's why we are saying here that there could be decision makers, obviously the final customers, but there are very important people who enable that decision. Unless, supposing I want to buy server for my new data center that is coming up. But there are n number of servers available. Even if I'm a decision maker, I just don't have adequate knowledge of what are the servers provided by IBM, Cisco, and so on and so forth. So I need to depend on subject matter expert or the consultants. These people enable decision making. And we need to, as marketeers, have to be cognizant that we need to influence decision enablers also. And then there are partners who help us deliver the way we want to deliver. You may have the best of the product, but if your logistic partner is not efficient enough, the customer is still unhappy because he did not get the delivery in the time that you want. You can't wash your hands off and say, but that delivery or logistics is not part of my offering. So who you partner with is also equally important. The entire value proposition is about collaboration. The entire thing is about delivering value and creating value for our customers and for our partners together. And that's why this concept about customer is very important. And then, like I said, there are 7 P's of marketing. Your first year, second year students, everybody knows people, planet, profit get added to price, promotion, place, and product. So what we as marketeers should do is translate those 7 P's in what it means for customer. I just got a reminder that my time is running out, so I will not go in details, but I'll give you one example. You may have a great product, customer doesn't care. He needs solution to his stated or unstated problem. You cannot go with a product. You have to go with a solution that solves his problem. And that's where we are saying that your company's unique sales proposition comes into the play. And I'll take just one more. For example, you may have great people. Customer wouldn't care less. What he is looking at, that are they competent enough to convince my decision makers, my decision influencers, my operations guys that this is the right solution. So you should be having competency and skilled people who should be able to working to be able to deliver value, and so on and so forth. We all are cognizant with these 5, but we must remember that every time customer is going to ask what's in it for me, and that answer we have to have by heart. The next one is on relationship management, and I'll just spend a minute, I think, here. What we are saying is this is a relationship axis and this is a business understanding axis. So if you don't have great relationship and if you don't have great business understanding of your customer, you are simply an outsider. You don't mean anything to him. You have great relationship with a customer, but you don't have adequate business understanding. You are merely a friend that he keeps talking to you about. It doesn't mean much. On the other hand, you don't have good relationship with customer, but you have fantastic business understanding. Then you only are a supplier. And as the saying goes, all things being equal, customer will do business with his friend. All things not being equal, customer will still do business with his friend. Why? Because he will give his friend an opportunity to match feature by feature, price by price, delivery by delivery. So I think our endeavor as marketeers is to get to this partnering status where you not only have great relationship, but you also have fantastic business understanding. And if you get to a partnering zone, then probably you are going to see the impact on the matrices that we get as a marketeer measured upon. So relationship is unprecedentedly important. The next 2 by 2 is actually my favorite. And the way you are going to read this is that customer criticality value. What does customer value? Some customer will value price. Somebody will value technology. Somebody will value service. Somebody will value dependability. Somebody will value relationship. Every customer will value something that you must know. And then on this axis is your company's strength. You know, Tesla is perhaps number one company in when it comes to electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and so on and so forth. They know they are damn good, but they then don't operate in internal combustion engine space. Or Mercedes-Benz operates in a luxury segment. They don't come back to the bottom and start competing with Quid and Maruti and others. So are you operating on your strength? Is the second axis. Now hear me out carefully. First, let's talk about this axis. This is a concept of niche marketing. You have the capabilities. Your customer wants it, but it's outside your competitor domain. Customer wants it, you have it, competitor doesn't have it. That's what we call a niche market. That's the sweet spot you would like to operate in. But the bad news is that that sweet spot is never perpetual, because there are people who are going to come back and copy you. So you have to move up the value chain, right? So what we are saying as a marketeer, we need to have a good understanding of what customer values, and we need to have thorough understanding of what we are capable of. And if they too are matching, there you are in a wow mode. And that's where every company would like to operate. And then I don't have to explain this. I probably don't have to explain this, but I think this I do want to explain, that as an iceberg, you know, customer may not value a particular offering that you have, but your job as a marketeer to show him this iceberg that is beneath the water. The customer may not know what it could do to him. I think it's Steve Jobs' statement that get up close and personal so much with your customer that you should be in position to tell him what he needs even before he realizes. If he is not realizing, he is not valuing. But if you make him realize, you are actually showing him that iceberg. And that's what we as marketeers need to do. And that's why this understanding for value creation is very critical. I must have overshot time, but I think this is important. So I'm not going to spend time. These things speak for themselves. These are the things you as a marketeer, each word has a deep meaning. You have to take cognizance of each of these and actually go design thinking. There is no out of box thinking. There is no box thinking. That's how we are saying it. Because for marketeer, nothing is a limit. You know, you have to keep at it. So we take cognizance of this. We dive deep. In the interest of time, I can't go any further on this slide. The next slide talks about global trends. Again, I don't have time. I have to simply skip this. But just want to make headline points that deglobalization, which means Atmanirbharta, depending on your own captive resources, domestic resources, is the way world is moving. Focus is on core competencies, sticking to knittings, doing things that you really do well, weeding out the others. Flexibility in terms of processes, in terms of modeling, in terms of value chain is very critical. Remote engagement is a way you have to learn to operate. That is no choice for that. Then digitalization, a lot has been spoken about. Consolidation. Clearly, you know, your ability to stay without revenue, without profit. So many people have, you know, come on the streets. So that's why we are seeing a lot of companies merging, getting acquisition, bankruptcies. So that's where we as marketeers have to be cognizant, because next market growth opportunity could be through inorganic route, which is merger and acquisition. Who is going to tell? I mean, you guys are the one who are going to be hands, eyes, and ears of the company. So don't think M&A is for finance. Yeah. Okay. Then price we spoke about, environment we spoke about. And now, so these are the slides only for you, for no one else but for you. When you as a marketing executives enter tomorrow after graduation, what you will find yourself doing, and that's the essence of my talk. What's in it, what's in this 1 hour presentation for you is on these 2 slides. You could find yourself doing some kind of a research function, which is really eyes, ears, and intelligence or nerve center of a company, where you will actually acquire data, process data, weed out non-productive data, make insights, enable decision making. That's a very, very important function. You could be data scientist. What, ma'am, you said there is a data overload. No, you can get drowned in data. What data to look for, what sources to look for, how often to look for, what to draw insights upon. Otherwise, I remember my doctoral research, it was on international marketing strategies. And the more you learn how less you know. The more you read, the more you know that you don't know much. So I think this data scientist is a very, very important function. And this function I'm putting in marketing because they are able to cater. And that's what ma'am was telling, that don't limit marketeers only to front end or customer facing. You could find yourself doing some strategies, which is very important, because end of the day, you have this intelligence, but unless you put a tangible time, date, person, responsibility, you can't progress. So you have to work like a strategist, someone putting that back into the action, which is something in companies today known as PMO, or program manager's office, where you take a big project and as a marketeer, you are cognizant of that project. And I'll give you one example. I often say new product development, whereas we often squarely blame it on the technology people to develop new product. Actually, the marketeers are equally responsible, because as the product development goes, they have to develop customers. Who will buy these products? Who will have appetite to pay for the price? Who will have appetite to use the technology feature? So unless market and product development go hand in hand, tomorrow you won't make product for the markets. So as a marketeer, our function by design is not to find customers to sell our products. That's a sales function. But to find products that our customers would like to buy. I repeat, as marketeers, our job is not to find customers who we want to sell our products. Our job as marketeers is to find products that our customers would like to buy. You are company's ambassador or market pull, or that's something function that you will be finding yourself doing. And then we talked about social media marketing. Clearly there is a big time influence that you can do there. There is content specialist. Content is king. How many portals, social media, there is an information overload, but you definitely know some news channels you have to watch, some analysts you have to follow. So you can be one of those content specialists. There's always dearth of high quality content. And then key account managers, just like I think it's going to come in relationship segment, but we said that we have customers. How do you deepen engagement with customers? How do you actually get bigger share of their wallet? How you can partner with them on their greenfield, brownfield expansion plans? How you can be one of them? It's something which you as a key account manager for that function will have to find yourself doing. And finally, there is a customer experience champion. This term customer experience, and ma'am, we will come here again for a session on customer experience, because product differentiators are dying. Me Too players are coming in. Feature by feature deliveries are matched. Then what is that is going to differentiate between organizations? It is only the customer experience. And we as a customer experience will have to actually drive that change. Yes, I'm ending now. So that will be driven again by the satisfaction surveys, by the experience surveys. So, and it's sad that, the slide that are most important, we are getting defocused. But this is what your takeaway from this, my session is, that as a marketeer, and I have this slide here, I'm not sure you can read, but I have said here that come sun, come rain, come VUCA environment, otherwise also marketeer, sky is the limit. I know I exceeded time, but it was very interesting and very insightful to be here. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and patient listening. Thank you. I wonder there is any time left for question answer. Probably one or two, if there are any. No questions? Sir, I'm happy that you are that brave heart, because others are under pressure of professors about managing time.
Considering all the basics you have just now mentioned and applying those things, customer centric and all the digital marketing and everything, and customer satisfaction and creating products for the customers and pricing and all those things. Now, if we compare Jio and Airtel and Idea, so what is the situation? We are heading for a monopoly or what?
So that's a great question. Thank you very much. I'm by no means I'm a telecom expert, but I'll try to still give you an answer. There you go. So you have a, so whatever I answer, please. Luno, I think we need to look at telecom segment over a period of time. You know, monopoly, clutter, what shall I say? Consolidation is part of the game. Regulators are there for watching. I mean, the same thing was also talked in the automobile sector. Same thing was also talked about aviation sector. So there are sectors which are 100-year-old sectors which have gone through these phases. Indeed, we are appear to be heading right now for a situation which is seemingly monopolistic like. But I think there are market regulators. There are people with bigger money bags. There are, monopolistic laws, regulations. So I think we will sooner than later see some kind of a intervention, if I may call it, on a government level or perhaps on a market level to see that this seemingly monopolistic situation is eased out, but more specific in his thing. But just about time for one more question, if there is any. I'll be surprised if there are no questions. No?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
So I have two questions. Firstly, can you just give us a brief little bit of your story, like how you proceeded and reached where you have reached? That is one of my questions, so that people can learn and get inspired. And second one is, can you give some examples from your own business and from your own experience, like how things changed for your particular company due to COVID?
Those are great questions. A little bit time consuming, but I'll try to keep it short. Well, I don't think I have achieved any great heights, but whatever little I've been able to do, I'll tell you. I was very fortunate. So 3-4 things when I reflect on my career stand out for me. One is I have been fortunate to work in several companies, multinational companies, Indian promoter companies, companies like Tata's, where systems, processes, policies are stable, relationship, trust is valued. American companies like Honeywell, where there is a lot of entrepreneurship, enterprising thing. Companies like Suzlon, which are extremely jet-paced growth and probably also decline. Now Praj, entrepreneur-driven company. So I had a good fortune of understanding cultures of different companies. Point number one. Point number two, I worked in telecom, and not telecom, but we used to make fiber optic cables in Sterlite. So I know to some extent that. But power, process automation, control automation, then renewable energy. I mean, my spread has been pretty application driven. So that gave me deeper insights to various industries. And there are always cross industry learning. So cross cultural learnings in terms of organization, cross industry and segmental learning. The next thing that worked for me, I was very fortunate to get good exposure to world around me. I have traveled around 40 countries, around 5 continents, doing formulating and implementing go-to-market and business strategies. So appreciating cultures, picking out, riding the things. So I think that worked for me. Then another thing I reflect back is I have tried to keep myself abreast with education. My engineering, my management post-graduation, my doctoral graduation, my advanced programs after that. And unfortunately, there is no postdoctorate program here. Otherwise, I would like to do that. So that's learning is also continuous. So these are the few things that have worked for me. And I think learning is perpetual. So that's a quick answer to your first question. For COVID, for our company, we quickly graduated to work from a home environment. we graduated to weekly planning instead of quarterly or half yearly. We forgot about business plans. We forgot about quarterly reviews. We just had a week on week, take day as it comes thing. We completely cut out the non-discretionary expenditures. We completely focused on select customers. We harnessed the prowess of digital marketing, or rather information technology, to stay in touch with our customers, negotiate contracts with them. We even did lot of social work. I mean, that brought company big laurels in terms of helping COVID victims, provide them free hand wash sanitizer know-how, which we have in terms of technology solutions. So number of things worked for us. And I don't say that we are out of woods yet, but I think that's what has worked for us, but perhaps more offline. I just have don't guts to ask whether there is time for any more question. But thank you once again for being so patient, and thank you for calling me once again.